Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Be me. A shithead 7th grader. I have a good friend who is twins with a hot girl. Fraternal twins, mind you. Of course, I'm not friends with a woman. MP4. Not relevant to the story, but she's dead now because of a heroin OD. Anyway, we will call my friend Dave. Going over to Dave's house to stay the night, planning on playing Viva Pinata on the 360 and watching dubbed over kung fu movies. Feeling excited. We leave from school and walk to his house. Dave's friends from his neighborhood are walking with us. His friends are not my friends, they are figs, and I have autism, so I can only handle one friend at a time. I am middle class, and this is a very rich neighborhood. Feeling subtle socioeconomic ostracism that seems to originate from the parents of all these kids. Always feel out of place when I come here. But Dave is very cool, and I ignore it for that reason. Dave's friends are not cool, however, which is important to the story. For example, one of Dave's friends is a kid we will call Skeet. Skeet has a little sister who is 10 years old. Skeet's sister starred in a shitty straight-to-blockbuster horror movie when she was 8. Skeet's family will not let you forget it. Posters of this shitty movie that literally no one has ever seen are on every wall of their living room. Pick related. All the undue praise has warped this child into a monster. Child goes around kicking people in the shin and spitting at them. This isn't even in a place where people can have a film career. That does not stop this child from being an emotional terrorist. I am autistic, and even I can tell this demon spawn cannot read a room. Her older brother Skeet is much the same in effect, as are the rest of the kids I met in this neighborhood. Naturally, I am distressed by the development that what I thought would be a chill night of Vidya is turning into booling with the shitty neighborhood kids. I don't complain though. Middle school me is just happy to be included in something. Dave and I stopped by his house to drop off our backpacks. We reconvene with the others and leave for the park. We are dressed warm with about a foot of snow on the ground. We walk around the neighborhood and chilled at the park for a few hours. At one point, me and Dave's hot dead, but not at the time. Sister are flirting by the swings. Everyone gets quiet for a bit, and I notice how empty the snow-covered neighborhood seems. There is a gap in my memory here, and picks up again as we are all walking back towards the cul-de-sac where Dave and Skeet live. We go to Skeet's house, take off our winter coats, and start playing pool at a table surrounded by posters of the shithead child star. It has been about 30 minutes since we left the park, and I'm starting to feel uncomfortable at Skeet's house and wanting to leave. Maybe that is just a reconstruction based off of what happens next. All of a sudden, Dave barges into the living room, still wearing his coat, red-faced and furious. "Bro, what's wrong?" Skeet asks. "What do you mean, what's wrong? What the hell, guys, why did you leave me like that?" He accuses all of us. He appears to feel genuinely betrayed. Everyone else is just confused. Myself, Dave's hot now dead sister, Skeet, and maybe one or two more kids. All share a look. Dave is getting standoffish, which is rare for him as he is a really nice dude. Due to his laid-back nature, he lets it go pretty quick. Dave warms up, calms down, and we all change the topic. I bring this up later that night when we are alone. Ask what happened. Dave gets defensive, or maybe just embarrassed. Says he woke up in the snow at the park and everyone was gone. Has no more concrete details than this. I vaguely remember him saying something about hitting his head while on the playground equipment. But if he said that or if I proposed that as an explanation, I don't know. We move on, but I do apologize for leaving him there. 12 years later. Think about this again. Realize there is absolutely no reason for me to go to Skeet's house without Dave there. Realize that with crippling social anxiety, interacting in this group without the only one of them I really knew being there would have been stressful. The discomfort that should have been caused by this didn't settle in for me until only a few moments before Dave arrived. Everyone was shocked and confused when he showed up, red-faced and wet from supposedly passing out in the snow. Somehow, everyone but him had a completely different experience of the afternoon. Looking back on it, up until the exact moment that Dave arrived, I could have sworn he was already in the room with us, playing pool. I haven't really talked to him since, aside from a brief Instagram DM a few years back. I thought about bringing this up then, but wasn't sure how. As for me, I have mostly cured my autism by lifting weights and converting to Gnosticism. I know it isn't a very crazy story, I just thought it was a weird and creepy childhood memory. A shared mental glitch? Fairy glamour? Were we just dumb? Who knows? It's probably that last one, but it's still fun to think about.
Oh no, it has all the markings of a crazy story. Why did your social anxiety have an on-off switch that you were not aware of? Who were these people really? And what really happened during the missing time? Were there other missing time events? And do you really want to know the answers?
That's really what bugs me. As soon as I was getting uncomfortable, Dave arrived. No one had any explanation for how he was left behind. And even there in the moment when I tried to think back to what happened at the park, once Dave came back and how, when we left, became an important question to ask, we decided to leave feeling indistinct. But even as I say that, I have to caution myself reading too much into that just because revisiting memories corrupts them. And at this point, 12 years later, it is getting hard to tell what is unclear in retrospect versus what was already unclear as it was happening. There wasn't really any lasting fallout from this, and the one thing that could have explained why I was still going along with the group despite Dave's unnoticed absence is that had a romantic thing with his sister. So she may have been the one to urge me to come along with the group as we entered Skeet's house. But still, I really should have noticed Dave not being there. He was the entire reason I was even in that neighborhood.
I've heard this theory and even seen it in action, but every memory you've ever had is preserved in pristine detail. Your mind senses it as necessary, though, to keep your sanity. Again, though, be careful of asking questions you don't want the answers to. It could be completely innocent. Yeah, no, totally not. If it was, someone would have remembered and said something about it.
I'm honestly super curious about what you're implying. It sounds like you have an idea about what might have happened. I don't think I agree on the censoring theory, though. I don't believe in memory repression, and I have met people who just have a very poor memory.
No, but I've seen and heard about some things involving missing time, and they are rarely warm and fuzzy. This is a big topic, but yes, your mind censors things out that it thinks you will not be able to handle. The alternative is a sanity break as you try to grasp something your current mind frame is not equipped to handle. Be assured that your subconscious and deep mind records everything in perfect detail. Your conscious mind may have marked it as junk, but it's still there. And yes, there are people with poor memory or near-perfect recall. That's the difference in having a good library staff in their memory space or not. But it's been proven that the ability to forget is an evolutionary advantage, keeps your awareness less cluttered.
I have one. Be 11 or 12, young but old enough that the memories are pretty clear. Be camping on my family's property. It's not huge, but has a decent-sized patch of trees surrounded by the fence. Like to make fires and sleep in my hammock out there in the summer. Put out my fire, dousing it with a 5-gallon bucket of water. Get into the hammock and fall asleep. Wake up later, not sure how much time has passed. A fire is roaring in my fire pit. The fire seems big, but it has a red color and does not emit much light. Almost like a flare. A man, I can't see him well because he's squatting a good yard or two from the fire. He's wrapped in a blanket and he looks like an old man. Nothing overtly terrifying about the old man, but the feeling of dread and evil was overpowering. I ran into my house screaming. Dad runs out with a revolver, comes back a minute later, says he doesn't see anyone. Ask him about the fire. Cold, not even coals. People always chalk it up to a dream, but I never clearly woke up from anything. I only saw something after I woke up. The other excuse is that it's a homeless guy, but with the strange fire and the fact that it went out with no evidence, as well as the strong feeling of evil that I have never felt even in scary, non-paranormal experiences, I believe it was a spirit of some kind that could control what I saw.
11. Poor. I live in a trailer park. The place is a pretty normal community. Standard pill pushers, retirees addicted to oxy. A couple of the trailers aren't even being rented out anymore. One in particular sits at the front. An odd, gaudy trailer with orange trim. The place has been empty for so long, nobody even remembers anyone ever living in it. It was there before the retirees were. Everyone in the neighborhood stays away, even the kids. I never understand why. Get ballsy and decide to take a look. The ground around the trailer is covered in Hot Wheels. I count about 12. In the yard, I found this 5-pound geode filled with orange-brownish crystals. Swing around out back. The entire section of the backyard is covered in pennies, primarily situated underneath the trailer's laundry vent. Take every last one, all told, $7.34. I have to use my oversized shirt as a basket to carry them all, plus a couple Hot Wheels and the geode. I go home to drop it all off. Run over to my mate's house with a jar of pennies. Tell him to grab his shit, tell his little brother and sister and move. His family's on welfare and my mom was probably some form of prostitute in retrospect. We were poor-ass kids. Snacks were a rare treat. Suddenly have almost $10 between the four of us to have a field day with. We run across the highway to our local grocer, buy as many snacks as we can carry. Tell my best mate about the trailer, how there were pennies all around it. Doesn't believe me, I'll show him. It takes a second to convince him, but we head out eventually. Swing out around back to show him where the pennies were. The ground is littered with pennies again. Weathered old pennies, look like they'd been there for years. He believes me, but that's the thing. I had taken every last one from that backyard. It's pretty hard to miss a penny, especially on concrete. All told, we found $4.12. Pick related, it's the trailer.
This happened a long time ago, so the house is remodeled now, but it used to be run down in every aspect. Be 9 years old. I live next to pick related. Neighbors always had a loud ass saw going in the house. Never knew what they were doing. Would just hear a saw going off every day. One day get curious. Decide to walk to the house. The fence hadn't been erected yet, so our properties were connected. Reach the back of the house, but no sign of a saw. Noise has gotten louder though. Get closer and reach the other side of the house. Saw is blaring in my ears, but is nowhere in sight. By the way it sounded, it should have been right in front of me. Get confused, scared, and run off. Fast forward 10 to 11 years, moved out a long time ago. Talking to my dad about experiences. Mention the house and the saw. Anon, no one was living in that house while we lived there. But the saw. The last guy living there died in that house. I even talked to the cops who had come to investigate the scene. No one moved in afterwards. Turns out the last tenant had essentially isolated himself inside the house and rotted away before anyone found him. Assumed to be a self-termination. Happened just before we moved there. No one moved in after that. No one could have been operating a saw in that house. That house had a lot of strange shit going on. My mum took a surprisingly well-kept encapsulated dried rose from a trash heap right by it because she thought it looked nice. I couldn't go anywhere near it because the damn thing would give me a headache the closer I'd get to it.
I actually have one that gets me really emotional to this day. Be 6 turning 7 in a couple days. Beg my mom and dad every year to come eat lunch with me at school every time my birthday comes around. Irrelevant, but I was always a shy, loner kid, still am. Never wanted to sit at the lunch table at school. Too many people near me made me feel cloudy. My parents are, in retrospect, stressed, possibly because my father had lost his job, and they had been fighting recently. They tell me that they aren't going to be able to eat lunch with me. Be a tiny bit upset with this fact, but I am a passive person, so I just say okay. The day of, I try to ply my parents with acting as if my stomach is upset. I do this frequently, they are wise to it. They send my ass to school. Come lunchtime, I am dreading having to do the happy birthday song. I was in multi-age learning, so they had the entire class block thing sing happy birthday to the lucky SOB. I walk out to the playground after lunch. It's my dad. My father is a big guy, 4U. He was 6'7", a ginger that wore Coke bottle glasses, had a big red mustache, and dressed tackier than hell. My mother dressed him. He is standing straight, obviously looking for me, on top of a wooden barricade that separates the blacktop for the basketball courts and the ground soil and gravel of the playground. I run over to him. Dad, what are you doing here? My memory gets pretty fuzzy from here. He tells me something along the lines of, I didn't want you to be upset. Surprised and happy that he is here, I grab him by the hand. Me and him walk along the fence line separating the playground and the parking lot of the school. In retrospect, we had walked pretty far away from the playground, more towards the beginning of the forest. Talking about nothing in particular, or at least nothing I can remember very clearly. Recess is coming to an end, I can feel it. My dad stops very abruptly. He turns to me and kneels down. He said something to me, he looked very serious. Grabs me by the shoulders firmly, turns me around and gives me a little shove, not aggressive, just a little nudge, back toward the playground. When I am turned, I see my teacher, Miss Rosa, looking bewildered. She fans her hand toward herself, calling me back in. Apparently recess had already ended, and I was late. I turn around to say goodbye to my dad. Nobody. Couldn't even see him walking away. Think to myself as a kid, I guess he just left LOL and shrug it off. I get back into my class. A few kids chuckle as I was led in hand by Miss Rosa angrily, while the teacher's aide was minding the kids. A class period later, I was called to the front office. My sister is waiting there for me. Weird, my sister usually doesn't pick me up. She looks pretty upset and tells me that we are going home. I ask why, and she doesn't answer me. When we are about halfway home, she tells me that Mom is going to be really upset and crying, and she tells me that I should probably just go to my room and be quiet. When we get home, I am led to my room by my sister, and I sneak a glance inside my parents' room to see my mother sat at the end of the bed, and beside her our chatty neighbor. My mother is loudly crying. A little bit worried, I asked my sister what happened. My father had passed away that morning. He had been lying prone on the bed, applying for jobs on his little crappy laptop. My father apparently had a massive heart attack and died quickly, face planted into his laptop. My mother had been doing the laundry and making breakfast for the both of them after seeing me off to school. He had been dead for a little while before she discovered him, I believe. By the time the paramedics came, it was too late. I remember getting upset and telling my sister that I had just seen him at lunchtime. My sister and I got into an argument at this point. I try to explain that he was probably still at school. My sister ends up using the old coat hanger to lock me in my room. My memories of this day end here. I am not receptive to the idea of death. I am a little bit of an autist, so I don't quite grasp the finality of it. Don't quite understand it until a year or two later, not quite sure. Irrelevant, but I remember being a shitty, selfish kid and asking about my birthday the next day to my sister. Yells in my face, and old coat hanger locks me in my room again. I developed this strange habit of finding random objects that I thought my brother, sister, and mother would like, wrapping them in writing paper and leaving them in front of their doors, back on point. A number of years later, I had forgotten entirely about this. My sister and I are getting breakfast to catch up. She has kids now. Apropos of nothing, asks me, "Hey, you remember when I picked you up from school when Dad died?" "Yeah, why?" "You said that you had seen him on the playground before I picked you up." Start losing my mind. I hadn't thought about that in a decade. The entire thing hits me all at once. As an adult, I start losing control of my emotions, start trying to explain the event to my sister, have to compose myself every other sentence so as to not embarrass myself in front of the fine denizens of the Waffle House. It's been 5 years since she brought those memories back to me. I try not to think about it, as I can only move forward. Whenever I find myself thinking about it, I am desperately trying to remember what my dad had said to me that day, when he had grabbed me by my shoulders. Wish every day that I didn't have to think about it. I am unsure about how to feel about it. The more I dwell on that memory, the more I feel like my current day environment corrupts my recollection of it. I, for damn sure, do not try to discuss it with anyone except for anonymous basket weaving enthusiasts. I would have rather my sister not brought it back up to me. I have never been a believer in the paranormal, more of an avid hoper of it, but this memory caused me some inner turmoil with my beliefs. Whether my father had visited me post-mortem, or I just made it up that day, I can never remember. However, I really wish I could recall what he had told me that day.
My mother used to tell me that when an important person in your life passes, they will return physically temporarily to say goodbye. She's had similar experiences to you.
Me, about 5 or 6 years old, on a family vacation with another family that we are close with. Staying in a condo, maybe near Lake Tahoe? Don't remember. Myself and other kids having a blast running around the condo, just being kids. Repeatedly, out of the corner of my eye, see silhouettes of small creatures. Creatures look possibly humanoid, about the size of a house cat. I have a very faint memory of my sister mentioning seeing them too. Not disturbed by seeing them, just curious. Go to bed, get up the next day. Put on sneakers. Parents left a little piece of fool's gold in our sneakers. It's St. Patrick's Day. Parents set up a treasure hunt for us with gold chocolate coins outside. Many years later, realized that we might have been visited by leprechauns just before St. Patrick's Day. I have never confirmed the story with my sister since then. It was 30 years ago.
This is unrelated to the thread, not a childhood experience by any means, but relevant to your story. Be me. 42 years old, March 20th, 20. Dad just got a cancer diagnosis 3 weeks ago. My parents live 200 miles away. Go to stay with them for a while to help out. Dad in a wheelchair, Mom old and frail, drive them places, run errands, stuff you'd expect. Take them to the hospital so Dad can get first try at radiotherapy. Hospital is 100 miles from their house. Countryfolk.jpg. Get Dad checked in, take Mom home. Today was machine calibration. Tomorrow is actual therapy. Tomorrow. Mom phones Dad in hospital. Slurring and confused sounding. Worries, phones ward, and asks the nurse if he's okay. Doctor's with him now. I'll call you back when he's done. Screw it, let's ride. Driving the 100 miles to the hospital. About half an hour away. Sudden, overwhelming sadness. Start crying inexplicably. Look at Mom, she's teary too. Drive faster. Get to ward. Be ushered into a little quiet room. Wait about 5-ish minutes for the doctor. The doctor comes in. Sorry, he passed away suddenly. WTF, why? Cancer caused his lungs to flare up, swell, crushed his heart. Nothing we could do. When? The doctor looks at the watch. 40 minutes ago. Right at the moment, the two of us got the overwhelming sadness and started crying out of nowhere. Bear in mind the cancer was bad, but they caught it early. We knew he was done for, but not any time soon. Figured he had at least a few years left. We had no reason to think he'd die that day. We were thinking they'd given him some weird meds or something. Up until that moment, we'd been chatting normally, as jovially as possible when he just got a cancer diagnosis. The exact moment he died, we both knew somehow.
First thing I think of is organ trafficking, but maybe I just spend too much time online. Did you see his body that day?
Mom went in to see him, but I didn't. I didn't want my last image to be of his corpse. I prefer to remember him vibrant and smiling. Besides, I've seen enough dead bodies, even watched a guy die once, so I had no reason to go in to see Dad. I would seriously doubt organ theft. He was a very heavy smoker, hence the lung cancer. He also had problems with the arteries in his legs from the smoking. His heart was probably half clogged up before the cancer kicked in, to be quite honest.
I still can't rationalize this. Be me, 17. Driving to a new mountain biking spot with my dad in the middle of nowhere. Old paved logging road with dense woods on both sides. Told earlier by a ranger that the spot was past some power lines. Naturally, all we are doing is looking for lines. See them in the far distance suspended in air, but trees are still too dense to see much else besides a glimpse. They stay in view for a minute. Both agree we see them. Keep driving through thick forest. Lose sight of them as terrain shifts. 10 minutes later, no sign of them. 20 minutes and we decide to turn around. Must have missed a turnoff, although I don't remember seeing one. Drive back on the same road. Enter massive clearing, 300 feet across with 3 massive city-grade power pylons. Clearing extends along cables for as far as the eye can see both directions. We somehow got across the clearing without either of us noticing. Freaked out, so we retraced our steps a bit. There are no other roads, no breaks in the clearing. We crossed the clearing, but we were in the woods the whole time. Getting chills writing this. My dad brushes it off and almost gaslights me, saying we were somehow both distracted, even though all we were doing was looking for the power lines. What if we got out of the car? Would we have vanished into the twilight zone? I wish more than anything we had a dash cam that day.
In the house I grew up in, 1990 to 2010, I never felt alone. If I was left alone there for whatever reason at any age, I would always make sure to leave lots of lights on. When I was a kid, I would wait for my parents to get to bed to sneak downstairs and sleep on the couch every night because my room scared me. When I was about 8, one night something in the living room woke me up, like a tapping noise on the windows above the couch I was sleeping on. Being 8, I just lay there frozen. When I calmed down a little, I rolled over and faced the kitchen. As soon as I rolled over, the ceiling light fell off the kitchen ceiling and smashed onto the floor. My mom and dad woke up and I was already up but pretended to be asleep because I knew something was wrong, and I was scared. When I was 15, I had my first real boyfriend. My parents went on vacation to Florida to watch car races. They told my brother not to let my boyfriend sleep over. I think he could really care less, as long as we were quiet. When we were going to bed the first night, we slept on the couch in the living room. We shut off the TV, pulled our covers up, and started to go to sleep. I heard him say, "I love you." So I said, "I love you too." And so did he. We both realized that we had heard someone else say, "I love you," clear as day. The voice didn't sound like a man or a woman. It's very hard to explain. We slept with the TV on for the rest of the night. The next night when we were going to sleep, we heard the kitchen's back doorknob jiggle. It was locked, thankfully. We ran to the kitchen quietly, because we thought someone was trying to break in. We listened very quietly behind the door for at least 10 minutes. We heard multiple people going up and down the back stairs quietly. We both grabbed huge kitchen knives and called the cops. The cops said they didn't see anything out of the ordinary, and the ground was wet so they couldn't see any fresh footsteps. One night when I was 16, I had a male friend over. We were getting ready to go out for the night. He was in the upstairs bathroom, which is directly across the hall from my bedroom. Both doors were open, so I could see him out of the corner of my eye. I was in my room and saw my sister go by with a laundry basket. I said, "Hey, I didn't know you were home." She didn't say anything, so I said, "Beth?" Still nothing. I came out of my room and went to go walk towards hers when I realized her light was off. I told her I didn't think it was funny, reached in her room, put the light on, and she wasn't there. I told my friend that I saw my sister, and she wasn't even home. He said, "I saw that lady too. I thought it was her." He wanted to leave my house so quickly after that, and he never came back inside my house. If he had to pick me up, he'd wait outside on the front porch. There are a lot more minor things, but those are the majors. The last major thing from that house was hearing my father's voice. When I was 16, I dropped out of high school and had a kid shortly after. In 2010, 1 month after my dad passed away, I was 20. I finished adult high school and was excited and wanted to tell my mom. I wasn't living in my house anymore. I was living a few towns over with my son's father. I went to see my mom and tell her that I was going to be graduating. After I told her, we were all sitting around watching TV, and I heard my dad clear as day call out, "Bubby?" which is what he called my mom, and his voice came from the bedroom where he stayed until he went to a nursing home and passed away there. No one else heard it. My face froze up, and my mom asked me what was wrong. I said, "You didn't hear that? I just heard Dad call you." She said no, she didn't hear anything. I started freaking out and crying hysterically. 20 minutes after I calmed down, I left and went back to my apartment. The whole drive I was afraid to look in the rear-view mirror. I thought for sure I'd see someone. In 2010, we moved out of the house because we couldn't afford it anymore after my dad passed. I still have vivid dreams of it. Every single thing is the same in my dreams as how it was in real life. Even though I've seen the home since we've moved and nothing is the same, I don't think the house was haunted. I just think I'm very in tune with things like this.
Be me. 16 years old, summer break, so I'm playing my PS3 up till about 4 a.m. 200% focused on killing some zombies online on Resident Evil 5. The internet connection suddenly gets lost. Get disconnected from the game. Angry gamer noises.jpg. Remove headphones. Suddenly hear one of the most terrifying screeching and screaming noises ever coming from outside close to my window. Literally freeze in fear trying to process whatever the hell it was. Hear it again as I'm still frozen in place. Literally frozen, waiting for whatever the hell it was to just burst through my window and kill me. Look at the time from the corner of my eye. 3:30 a.m. Wait to hear it again. Nothing. Wake up older brother and mom telling them what happened. Look out the window and see nothing. Proceed to go to bed with music blasting from headphones to not hear that shit again. That noise has to be the most unnatural, terrorizing noise I've ever heard to this day. I can best describe it as a screech or scream of some big animal mixed with a high-pitched human female sound towards the end. It's the only time I've been frozen in fear and the only time I felt my brain freeze in the process of trying to make sense of a noise. I lived in a city-urban area, so odds of it being just an animal is low. I've heard just about every animal noise: foxes, cats, big cats, bears, etc., and nothing really comes close. It's like a human-animal combination. I also find it very uncanny the time it was and that my internet went out just seconds before I heard this shit. Had it not gone out, I would have been playing my game with my headphones on, so I probably wouldn't have heard that noise. I've heard stories about skinwalkers and wendigos making noises that literally make people cold in fear, and I can't help but think that's maybe what I heard.
This incident took place before I was born, in the mid-20th century. I heard about it from my father back in the 1980s. When he was a little boy, my father lived in the small village of Llanfrechfa. This was in the county of Gwent, which is in the southeast of Wales. That principality is part of the UK. Dad was an only child. When he was only 1 year old, his parents, my grandma and grandpa, fell out with each other. Grandma's parents, my great-grandma and great-grandpa, were also involved in the argument since they all lived together. I don't know many details because they were hushed up, and most letters concerning these matters were destroyed. As far as I know, there was friction between Grandpa and the others. This was mainly because Grandpa was a sailor who traveled the world while the others stayed in Gwent. They had different levels of experience and different attitudes to life, which soon drove them apart. They couldn't get along, so Grandpa left and went back to sea. Sometimes he returned to stay and work in the nearby town of Llanelli, where his own family had a construction firm. He tried to reconcile with Grandma, but she refused, and eventually they divorced. Grandpa went to Canada and married another woman, fathering a girl who became my aunt. Grandma, Dad, and the great-grandparents continued living in Llanfrechfa until Dad was 8 years old. Then, Grandma decided to take Dad to Llanelli. She planned to work as a midwife and make more money for herself and Dad. She worked hard, literally night and day, because babies can be born at any time. Dad studied in Llanelli and then Carmarthen. He was a diligent pupil at school. Eventually, great-grandma got sick and died. Grandma and Dad went back to Llanfrechfa for the funeral. They stayed on the little family farm, which was a small holding. While in the farmhouse after the funeral, Grandma woke up one night. At the end of the bed, she saw the spirit of her mother, great-grandma. She was a luminous, full-body apparition. She looked as she did in life, fairly short and thin with grey-white hair. She smiled broadly at Grandma and then faded away. Grandma was amazed at this reassuring event. There were no other witnesses, unfortunately. Great-grandma never appeared again, as far as I know. However, I believe that she gave Grandma hope for the future. Grandma and great-grandma both believed that they had some degree of psychic ability. Many years later, Dad, my brother and I had our own little psychic experiences. When my mother died, Dad seemed to sense her spirit in his house in Llanfair, Anglesey, Wales, UK. He didn't see her though. I was in Dad's house after Mum's funeral, watching TV with high volume when the TV turned off for no reason. No one pressed any buttons, and there was no power cut. I believe that Mum's spirit turned off the TV because she didn't like it loud. I got the message and reduced the volume. Over subsequent years, Dad and I had many psychic dreams of Mum. When Dad died, I had many psychic dreams of him too. My brother has also had several dreams about our parents. One of Dad's dreams was a premonition of his own death. One of my dreams gave me a secret from Mum. She'd had a miscarriage in 1975 or 1976 and hadn't told me because I was too young to understand. I asked Dad about it and he confirmed it. Mum showed me the baby, which then grew to adulthood in heaven. I know because I saw it happen in later dreams. The ultimate message from these experiences is that our late relatives watch over us for the rest of our lives. Sometimes they protect us from danger, such as when I was threatened by 2 young soldiers at Crewe railway station, North England, UK. I wanted to fight them, but an invisible force dragged me toward a railway worker instead. I asked the worker for help, and the soldiers left. This might have saved my life.
For reference, I do have schizophrenia, but not the paranoid kind. My thoughts and language processing are all messed up, but I'm not someone who thinks the government is out to get me, or has vivid hallucinations, so I know for a fact this happened to me. Be me. 14 or 15. Go out to smoke a cigarette. Horrible habit, I know. Grab my Bowie knife as I head out. Mom's not home and sister is asleep, so I'm not worried about getting caught. Grab a pack and my lighter as well as a few snacks. Think about going camping. Screw it, why not? .jpg. Get my tent and sleeping bag from my room. It's winter in South Carolina, so it's not snowing, but it's fairly cold. Decide to bring a jacket and blankets. Decide to scout the woods for my camp. Not too far deep in, but far enough to start smelling pine needles. Hear some screwed up sounds. Whatever, I don't give a damn, I've heard worse. Finally, after maybe an hour, get the camp set up. Start smoking and turn on my radio, turn it to the local rock station. Hell yeah, even out here I get the good shit. Almost half the pack down and I'm not tired. Start hearing some weird shit. Not like my normal whispers and chatter from being a schizo. Sounds like an animal screech. Goddamned pig screech or something. Go over to the sound like the first victim in a horror movie. Finally get there. I see something burning. Oh shit, the clan's out here too, huh? My eyes focus on the burning. It's not burning. It's a mass of pulsing flesh that smells like pure death. It looks like some shit out of the thing, but worse. The thing moves closer to me. I pause for a moment. Holy shit, run.gif. I go back to my makeshift camp and grab my shit and head home. Pray that shit never comes back again. We moved out of that house after the landlord died of mysterious circumstances.
I only had one paranormal thing ever happen to me. Be me. 17, backwoods-ass town hires me as a security guard because I'm almost 7 feet tall and have a deep voice. Pay is decent. Get to patrol some cool places a bit outside of my wheelhouse. Patrol even a graveyard. Surprisingly, my least eventful job. Get sent out to look over some storage warehouse kept in a literal bunker in the woods. It's a storage unit for a local TV show broadcast. Nothing interesting other than some cheaply produced toys for the cartoon show. Life-size doll of one of the characters, some koala-looking thing if I remember right. Surprisingly maze-like building, a lot of areas are left completely unused. Start hearing weird as hell noises from the main area. The koala doll is fucking standing straight up. It was only 5 feet tall, but still horrifying. Push it over and run out of the building. Quit my job the next day. Anticlimactic, but it happened.
These are memories of experiences both me and my brother experienced and still talk about to this day. I live in a small town, beautiful but with no significant history. Down the street from our house was an abandoned house. Looking at the top story of the abandoned house, you could see a figure with horns or tall ears in many of the windows that would move between windows day by day. This house was on the same street as a graveyard, just to bring it up. One day we broke into the house. I got bad vibes, so I noted out, but my brother and 4 other kids went deeper in. One kid fell through a stair into the basement, so they decided to go in. There was an oven down there with a human-sized femur near it. They all noted out of the house. Be in our house, same town, same block. Occurrences happen. The radio is completely unplugged from the wall with no batteries in it. Turns on to static and can make out some words that I cannot for the life of me remember what they were because we were both scared shitless. Strange floating lights outside of our windows. We both had windows facing the street side by side. A blocked-off room in our attic directly above my room that would frequently make weird noises such as scratching or thumping. Me and my brother directly remember these happening, and our stories of these events, other than being in the abandoned house basement, are the same. My experiences, alone. The shadow that would move in the closet outside of my room. The almost crystal-clear dead people I would see. The colonies of bugs that would vanish if I told anyone about them or tried to show people. The smoky white clouds that would roam through the graveyards walking like people. Brother's experiences alone. The entire guardian angel he could see with his own eyes outside of his window. Sounds of footsteps quickly running up the stairs, yet nobody was there. I was diagnosed with schizo, so the things I experienced could be explained by unnoticed childhood symptoms, but my brother isn't.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentexts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.
There's also a Rumble archive as a backup.